The views expressed on this program are not necessarily those of WTJX, its board, staff, or underwriters.
Time to show, it's your time. You're nominated as the greatest, and you're flowing in your minds. Radio done rated, some outdated. The friends you know, you won't.
Hi, good day, and welcome to the Washington Report. I'm Congresswoman Stacey Plaskett, and I'm so honored to serve as the Virgin Islands delegate to the U.S. House of Representatives. The Washington Report was created to inform Virgin Islanders on current federal issues that directly affect our community. You guys, I'm so honored to have as my guest today my colleague, fellow Democrat, my friend, the Minority Whip, Katherine Clark. Congresswoman Clark has proudly represented Massachusetts' 5th District for more than 10 years. Her service to her community and our nation have been fueled by a passion for lifting up women and families. She's a leading proponent of numerous key issues, including ending gun violence, improving access to affordable, quality childcare, and guaranteeing paid leave. In the fall of 2022, Congresswoman Clark was elected by her colleagues to serve as Democratic Whip, the second most senior position in the House Democratic Caucus. She previously served as Assistant Speaker of the House, as Vice Chair of the House Democratic Caucus, and as a senior member of the House Appropriations Committee. One of only 2 women to ever serve as whip, she currently has the distinction of being the highest ranking woman in congressional leadership. Thank you for joining me, Whip Clark, and welcome to the Washington Report.
I am so glad to be here and so glad to have a chance to talk to your constituents. And before we begin with your questions, I just want to tell your constituents what a valued partner you are, that you make Congress smarter, more effective, and a lot more fun. So we're really grateful to you and all of your leadership, whether it is leading subcommittees, the work you had on Ways and Means, just really a champion for those you serve, and a personal thanks to your constituents for sending you to Congress.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that. My husband has told me that I need to learn how to accept compliments.
Yes, so just work on that, because it's very sincere.
Thank you very much, and I know it is. And I value not just you as the leader in your leadership positions, but for your friendship as well. You are always looking out for other members, and that means a lot here in this dog-eat-dog Washington, D.C.
That's right.
First, I think it's important for you, if you can share with everyone, what is the responsibilities and duties of the whip?
Yeah, it is a job with a very catchy title,
yes.
But that people don't often understand. And it really comes from the term whipping the vote, which just means making sure that when our caucus decides on a strategy and a position, that the votes are there to support it. So it's helping members actually get to Congress, whether we're working through storms or illness, travel logistics, making sure people are here, and then working across all the different groups and ideologies represented in our diverse caucus, so that we are not only having people vote with unity, but also understanding the different challenges that can arise for people in their districts, what their particular needs are at home, so that we can help, plan and address those. So, we always want to do our prevention work is far more important than actually cracking down on members saying you have to vote this way. We really try and work from, our Blue Dogs to our New Dems to Progressive Caucus, across the tri-caucuses, to understand challenges before they come up and anticipate and work with members towards solutions.
But there are times when, and particularly in this Congress, when Democrats have delivered the votes.
Yes.
And so it's your job to identify those individuals who are going to vote a particular way, or to identify those Democrats who are going to go across the aisle and
Right.
support another piece of legislation, right? What's the work that involves? That sounds really, that's a task.
It's a task. And, I'm very fortunate to have a fantastic team of people that work with me. So we really start as, the majority sets the schedule, working with members, letting them know, over communicating about what we have coming up, and getting a read on where people are. And then trying to anticipate problems and really work to get us to a unified position. Unity doesn't always mean unanimity. Sometimes we need that. I think a great example was blocking the impeachment last week of
Right.
Secretary Mayorkas was a display of absolute unanimity within our caucus. But usually, we are in the minority. We are trying the best we can to use that solidarity to influence and to make sure that our voices are heard. But you mentioned a very interesting phenomena that I haven't seen since I've been in Congress, that this particular majority, Republican majority, is so bound up in their own infighting, their chaos, their really moving to the most extreme parts of their conference, that they rely on us now, Democratic votes, to move every major significant piece of legislation. And that was something I didn't anticipate
Right.
as we came into this Congress, but it is something that our caucus has continued to come together and do, because our values, our focus remains on the American people. And what we're not seeing from them is their focus is on Donald Trump and the most extreme members. And so we're just going to continue coming back to our work of lowering costs, creating good paying jobs, fighting for the planet, an economy where everyone can see opportunity, reproductive freedom. Those are the issues that drive our caucus, and it is a very unusual time to be in Congress with this reliance on the minority that we're seeing now.
You talk about that. I mean, there's only been 20 bills that have been put on the president's desk, when usually there are hundreds that go before a president in a Congress in a calendar year. And the majority sets the calendar and also sets which bills are going to come to the floor. That must be kind of frustrating as well, because there's so many good pieces of legislation that the Democrats are working on. Is there times that you have the ability to negotiate with the Republicans on that?
Yeah, there definitely are, but you're right, it is frustrating. It's frustrating to know that our caucus really does believe in bipartisanship, and that we continue to extend our hand in goodwill towards the other side. And it's something that I've admired about your career and the way that you have structured your ability and effectiveness in Congress is dependent on your being willing to reach across the aisle, to use those relationships to benefit the people of the Virgin Islands. And I see
But across the aisle doesn't look the same as it did when it first came
across
to
the aisle doesn't
Congress,
look
right?
the same.
Yeah,
And we've
yeah.
had Marjorie Taylor Greene, who seems to be leading the show over there, be very clear that bipartisanship for her is enough to dump the current speaker. I mean, just think about what that says about our system and how they view governing. We're supposed to come together from different parts of our country, from different backgrounds,
Right.
beliefs, experiences, come together and form a better product than I would bring alone. And when you can't do that work across the aisle, when bipartisanship has become a dirty word, that really makes the whole system sort of fall in on itself. And that's why we see people often say, well, you know, there aren't 5 of them who would come over and do this. And it's hard to take in that we wouldn't have people of common sense and common goodwill that would come across the aisle on some of these really extreme issues. But we're just not seeing that anymore in the way it used to be when we first came to Congress. And you might disagree on a whole host of things, but find that 10% where you can come together, compromise, and make progress.
So you talk about 5 coming across the aisle, which would then give you the majority for critical, really important issues. What are your 5 critical, important issues? Like, what would be the 5 things that you would hope that we could get across the aisle?
Yeah, well, right now, very much on my mind is the national security package. And that is, it is a situation that I think if you had said to me 10 years ago, there will be a party that will absolutely do nothing on immigration and border security, will go back on their demands to make a deal. The deal's made, and then they said, we still won't vote for it, and absolutely walk away from our commitments to our allies and other democracies, but also to our own national security, our own military readiness, our own core values of humanitarian aid. I would have said 10 years ago, how did the Democratic Party go so wrong? The fact that this is the Republican Party that is sort of historically built a brand on national security, border security, is completely abdicating their responsibility as the world superpower is astounding to me. But that is the situation that we are in. And we are seeing, you know, comments that I never thought I would hear that are pro-Putin. They are not even trying to sort of, you know, gauzy, or it is very direct. We are going to tell Putin that he is free to do whatever he wants in European countries. That translates into American lives being lost in defending our NATO allies. How could we be in this situation? So this is an area where we have to respond and use every tool we have in the minority to get us to a point where we can be sure that our country has military readiness, that we have our national security priorities met, and that we are meeting those needs of families. But we have 5. That's
well,
one.
Talk about families. I know that that's been like a real foundation of your engagement. Well, gun violence, of course, is one that I know. Everyone knows that you've really been a real champion to stop gun violence. In the Virgin Islands, out of 65 countries and territories, we ranked #1 for homicides by firearms per capita. So your advocacy in that area is something that the mothers and fathers and even the young people, you know, I've gone to junior highs and high school and asked someone if they know someone who was killed by gun violence, and every student raised their hand and asked children what they're worried about, and they talk about gun violence. But, you know, your work on, with some of our other colleagues, to force a vote on Keep America Safe Act, and what do you think about that legislation and what it could do for us?
Yeah, I hope it builds some muscle memory. You know, the first time in 30 years that we could move forward on a bipartisan piece of legislation. But it's not enough.
Right.
And it's a critical step, and I am proud that we were able to get there when we had the majority, but we need more. And just a few weeks ago, I toured in Parkland, Florida, the Marjorie Stoneham Douglas School. And that school, Stacy, is a time capsule to 6 years ago today. We're filming this on Valentine's Day. And nobody has been in that school except prosecutors, investigators.
It's a crime scene.
It's a crime
It's
scene.
a carnage scene.
It's a carnage scene, and it is a scene that was totally preventable. And I toured there with 3 dads. And to walk with those dads and have them point to the floor where their children's bloodstains
Yeah.
are still
Yeah.
there and say, this is where I lost Gina, this is where I lost Jamie, it's beyond gut wrenching.
Yeah, yeah.
And you superimpose that with a high school scene that could be any high school.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, there were still boxes of chocolates on top of textbooks, a stuffed animal with a Happy Valentine's Day balloon, unfinished essays on desks, you know, the lesson plans on whiteboards written in colorful marker.
Right.
We could be anywhere.
Yeah.
But then there are also the outline in blood of 2 students killed because they couldn't get the few inches behind their teacher's desk in time. The broken glass that embedded in the bottom of my shoes. It was so gut-wrenching. And this is a policy choice.
Yes.
We have chosen to allow gunshots to be the #1 cause of death of children. And as horrifying as that scene is and the mass shootings are, the daily gun violence that you're describing is equally corrosive to people's feeling of security, to community sense of freedom, and we have to stay on it. It is a choice, and we have to make a different choice that puts our kids and our communities first.
Well, you're speaking as someone who is obviously very passionate about that. And you being the highest female in leadership here in Congress, of course, I wonder what that femininity and your own experience as a mother, as a wife, when you bring that to the table in these discussions,
Yeah.
how do you find that that empowers you?
Yeah, I think it is just a different perspective. I think we have a different perspective when I know what it's like to not only have children that need childcare, but also have aging parents. And how do I possibly meet their needs? And I'm lucky enough that when I was in that situation, I was in Congress. I had good benefits. I had the ability to say, I have to change my schedule to care for a parent, care for a child. I have a spouse who helps me and has a second income.
Right.
That is not the case for a whole lot of people at home. So those issues around affordability and access to childcare, I understand that's economic infrastructure.
Yeah.
This is not some, private decision between a parent and a provider.
Right.
And then we look at the other side of childcare and long-term care, that work is primarily done by women and women of color. And we do not pay them enough while they're caring for our families to care for their own. That is an equation that is about justice and economic freedom and opportunity that we have to change. And childcare, to change that formula, it needs an investment from the federal government. And we have to keep up with other developing nations that are investing $15,000 a year of public dollars into a toddler's care, while here in the United States, we invest $500. And if we are serious about wealth inequality, if we are serious about workforce readiness, and if we are serious about making sure that every child is ready to learn when they hit kindergarten, childcare is one of the investments that we have to make, and we have to treat it as economic infrastructure.
Well, these are some heavy things we've been talking about and that you're all engaged in. And I know we really don't have too much time, but I just know that a presidential election is coming up and the campaign trail is heating up, of course. What are the issues that you think voters need to focus on as they are thinking about what they're going to do and how they're going to be engaged before Election Day?
Yeah, as I travel the country in
What's the most interesting place you've been to in
Oh,
this country?
I'm not going to answer that question. That is
Well, what's-
so going to get me in
Right.
trouble.
Well, what's 2 or so places that you've never thought you would have gone to?
Well, you
before you
know,
came to this-
Texas.
That's a whole nother world.
That's a whole nother world. But you know, one of the things about traveling to Texas, and I've now been there extensively, is, you know, that people care about the same things, and that I think is one of the most surprising and reassuring things, that people want community. They don't want division. They don't want chaos. They want to know that the government sees them and their family, and that someone in Washington is going to fight for them. And that's what every campaign comes down to. And as I look at our House candidates, as I look at the Biden-Harris administration, it's all going to be about the choice and a referendum on incumbents. And we have such a positive story to tell about the investments that we made together in infrastructure and bringing manufacturing back to our shores and lowering the costs of healthcare, and you know, and for folks to be able to afford to weatherize their homes, to drive down their cable bills by $30 a month, cap insulin at $35 a month for our
preach,
seniors. You know, this is the work we've done.
Yes.
So look at that, because we are going to do more of the same. And then there's the choice. And it really is a choice between Democrats and a president who every day is focused on the American people, those issues that keep them awake at night, that they talk about around their kitchen table, or extremism. And we touched on it before. Since we came into Congress, it has changed. There is a different dynamic where we saw it starting a year ago with Kevin McCarthy's election, and just giving the gavel over to the most extreme parts of his conference to become speaker, to gain power. And that has become the measure of success for them. And I feel like the Democrats and the American people are looking at them saying, do you see us? Do you see the American people? And when are you going to start fighting for them? And so as I travel in, you know, whether it's rural New Mexico or California, Texas, you know, all over, Kentucky, Ohio, that desire to be seen by their government and people's understanding that an issue like reproductive freedom, whatever your feeling may be on abortion, that should be one that is up to you to make with your family, your doctor, your faith, and not a politician in Washington. And that issue continues to resonate because people understand that at the core of it, it's about control and power, and restricting their freedom. And so as we look across the elections, everything from most recently in New York 3 with Tom Suozzi winning, but all the way back through 23, Democrats are winning and are going to continue to win because we're putting American families first. And that's going to be the key to our success here legislatively and also on the political trail.
Well, I love interviews like this where I really don't have to say anything. And
Well, you knew
just
me. I'm
getting
never at
so
a
much.
loss for words.
But one of the things I just wanted to ask you very quickly was, what's your hobby? How do you decompress?
Yeah, junk TV. You
Are you
know,
watching anything in particular right now?
you know, I always go back to Schitt's Creek.
Yes.
It's a good one. It's a good one.
uh-huh.
It's not really junk TV. It's wonderful TV. But I've also been trying to get back into a little bit of running.
Okay.
My 85-year-old mother-in-law has signed us all up for a 10K, so I got to keep up.
Is she going to do it?
Of course she is. She is.
Wow.
She is the runner in our family.
Wow.
So challenge accepted. And then pickleball has become.
Oh, you're one of the pickleball people.
I have. I'm not very good, but you know what? We work really hard, and you got to play a little too.
Yes. Well, you know, Jonathan, my husband, was a professional tennis player. So
Oh, boy.
he's
He's probably so
pickleball
good.
is like, no, you cannot do
Oh,
it.
you cannot do
No,
it.
no,
Oh,
no.
okay.
But I think we can convince him eventually
Yeah.
of engaging in it.
It's, you know, you can still play tennis
Sure.
for keeps and
Sure.
pickleball for fun.
For fun. Well, I want to thank you so much for being a part of this discussion. I'm so appreciative of your time. I know you're really busy. Congress is in session right now. So to take time, not just for me, but for the people of the Virgin Islands, thank you. And you are always welcome to come down to the Virgin Islands, St. Croix, St. Thomas, St. John, or Water Island. We will happily receive you and your team, your family, and God bless you.
Oh, right back at you. Thank you so much, Stacey.
Thank you. That wraps up this edition of the Washington Report. Thank you to the audience for joining us. Everybody stay safe and stay VI strong.